I never thought I'd be afraid of the dark again. Not since I was a kid. But here I am, 32 years old, lying wide awake in a strange bed, my heart racing every time I hear a creak or a rustle. It's not the unfamiliar sounds of this Airbnb that have me on edge, though. It's the knowledge that somewhere in this room, hidden in the shadows, a camera is watching us. And I have no idea how many more there are. It all started innocently enough. My girlfriend Mia and I had been planning this weekend getaway for months. Both of us had been working overtime for weeks, and we desperately needed a break from the city. When we found this charming apartment listed on Airbnb, it seemed perfect. Quiet neighborhood, modern amenities, and most importantly, far from the chaos of our daily lives. We arrived Friday evening, tired but excited. The host, a friendly-looking man in his 50s named Gerald, greeted us warmly. "Welcome, welcome," he beamed, ushering us inside. "I hope you'll find everything to your liking. I've tried to think of every comfort." As he gave us a tour, I couldn't help but be impressed. The place was spotless, with tasteful decor and high-end appliances. Gerald seemed to have thought of everything, from extra towels in the bathroom to a fully stocked spice rack in the kitchen. "Oh, and don't worry about the Wi-Fi," Gerald added as he was leaving. "The password is on the fridge, and the connection is excellent throughout the apartment. Enjoy your stay." With that, he was gone, leaving Mia and me to settle in. We spent that first evening just relaxing, ordering takeout, and watching a movie on the large smart TV in the living room. It felt good to unwind, to forget about deadlines and meetings, and just enjoy each other's company. It wasn't until the next morning that things started to feel off. I woke up early, unable to shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Mia was still asleep, so I decided to make some coffee. As I waited for the machine to brew, I found myself scanning the room, trying to shake off my unease. That's when I saw it. Just a tiny glint, really. If the morning sun hadn't hit it at just the right angle, I might have missed it entirely. There, nestled in the decorative molding above the kitchen cabinets, was a small, blinking red light. My stomach dropped. I knew instantly what it was, but I didn't want to believe it. Slowly, trying not to draw attention to myself, I grabbed a chair and climbed up for a closer look. My worst fears were confirmed. It was a camera, no bigger than a button, but unmistakably real and unmistakably on. I nearly fell off the chair in my haste to get down. My mind was racing. How long had it been there? What had it seen? And most importantly, were there others? I must have made some noise because Mia appeared in the doorway, yawning. "Everything okay, babe?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. I opened my mouth to tell her, then hesitated. What if there were microphones too? Instead, I forced a smile. "Yeah, just trying to reach the good mugs," I lied, pointing to the top shelf. "Want some coffee?" She nodded, still looking a bit concerned, but didn't press the issue. As I poured our coffee, my eyes darted around the room, now hyper-aware of every ornament, every picture frame, every potential hiding spot for a tiny lens. Over breakfast, I tried to act normal while my mind worked overtime. I needed to tell Mia, but I also needed to be sure. As soon as she went to take a shower, I began a frantic, silent search of the apartment. It didn't take long to find the second camera. This one was hidden in the air vent in the living room, positioned for a perfect view of the couch. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. By the time Mia got out of the shower, I had found two more, one disguised as a screw in the bedroom mirror frame, and another hiding in the smoke detector in the hallway, for cameras that I knew of and who knew how many I had missed. I waited until we were outside, pretending to go for a morning walk, before I told Mia everything. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "We have to call the police," she said immediately. But I hesitated. What if Gerald is watching us right now? What if he sees us calling the cops and decides to, I don't know, lock us out? Or worse. Mia bit her lip, clearly torn. "So what do we do?" "We can't stay here." "No, we can't." I agreed. "But we need to be smart about this. If we leave now, Gerald will know we're onto him. We need evidence. And so began the most stressful day of my life. We went back inside, pretending everything was fine. We made lunch, watched TV, even forced ourselves to act affectionate for the cameras. All the while, my skin crawled with the knowledge that every move we made was being recorded. As evening approached, we put our plan into action under the guise of a romantic dinner. We opened a bottle of wine and deliberately got a little louder, a little sloppier. We stumbled to bed early, giggling and shushing each other. Then we waited. An hour passed, then two. Just when I was starting to think we had miscalculated, we heard it, the soft click of a key in the lock. My heart leapt into my throat. This was it. I squeezed Mia's hand, feeling her trembling beside me. We listened as footsteps moved quietly through the apartment, pausing here and there. They were getting closer. The bedroom door creaked open. Through slitted eyes, I saw a figure slip inside. It was Gerald, moving with the confidence of someone who thought his victims were unconscious. He went straight to the mirror, carefully removing the hidden camera. Then he turned to leave, and I made my move. In one fluid motion, I leapt from the bed and tackled him. Gerald went down with a startled cry, the camera skittering across the floor. We grappled in the darkness, his surprise quickly giving way to desperate strength. "Mia, the lights!" I yelled. The room flooded with brightness, momentarily disorienting both of us. But I had youth and adrenaline on my side. By the time Gerald blinked the spots from his vision, I had him pinned. Mia was already on the phone with the police, her voice shaky but determined. Gerald had stopped struggling, his face a mask of defeat and something else. Was it shame? Disgust? I couldn't tell, and frankly I didn't care. "Why?" I demanded, my voice raw with anger and fear. "Why would you do this?" Gerald wouldn't meet my eyes. "You don't understand," he mumbled. "The things I've seen, the people I protected." A chill ran down my spine. What was he talking about? How long had this been going on? How many other guests had been unknowing stars in his private films? The next few hours passed in a blur. Police arrived, evidence was collected, statements were taken. We learned that Gerald had been running this scheme for years, amassing a disturbing collection of voyeuristic videos. The detectives assured us that he would be facing serious charges. As dawn broke, Mia and I sat on the curb outside the apartment, wrapped in shock blankets despite the warm morning. We were exhausted, shaken, but also relieved. It was over. "I keep thinking about all the other people," Mia said softly, leaning her head on my shoulder. "All those videos, all those violated privacies." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. The police had said they would be contacting previous guests, but the damage was already done. How many relationships had Gerald's camera strained? How many intimate moments had been stolen? As we watched Gerald being led away in handcuffs, a thought struck me. In his own twisted way, he had brought Mia and me closer together. Facing this ordeal side by side had shown us how strong we could be as a team. I turned to Mia, taking her hand in mine. "Hey," I said gently, "what do you say we go home, take a long shower in our own bathroom, with no cameras, and then sleep for about a week?" She managed a small smile, squeezing my hand. "That sounds perfect." As we drove home, the sun rising over the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that our world had shifted. The trust we usually extend to strangers, to hotel staff, to Airbnb hosts, to the countless people we interact with daily, felt fragile now, tainted. But looking at Mia, seeing the strength and resilience in her eyes, I knew we would be okay. We had faced our fear of the dark together, and we had come out stronger for it. The shadows might still hold hidden dangers, but we would face them with our eyes wide open, hand in hand. The floorboard creaked and my blood turned to ice. I was supposed to be alone in this cabin, miles from civilization. So why did I hear footsteps? I'd come to the secluded Airbnb to escape the noise of the city, the pressure of my job, the pitying looks from friends and family after my breakup. All I wanted was a week of solitude, just me and the wilderness. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just the rustic charm of a remote cabin and the peace of the surrounding forest. At least, that's what I thought I wanted. I arrived late Friday afternoon, the rental car kicking up dust as I navigated the winding dirt road. The cabin looked exactly like the pictures, a quaint wooden structure nestled among towering pines. The host, a gruff man named Earl, met me with a set of keys and a few brusque instructions. Generators out back if you need it. Water pumps temperamental. Give it a kick if it acts up. Nearest neighbor's 5 miles that away. He jerked his thumb over his shoulder. Ain't no cell service up here, so don't go getting yourself in trouble. With that, he hopped in his truck and left me alone. Truly alone, for the first time in years. That first night was blissful. I lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, curled up with a book, and listened to the wind in the trees. The silence was so complete it almost hurt my ears, accustomed as they were to the constant hum of city life. I fell asleep easily, lulled by the crackle of dying embers. It was the second night when things started to feel off. I'd spent the day hiking, exploring the trails that snaked through the woods around the cabin. The physical exertion felt good, clearing my mind in a way that weeks of therapy hadn't managed. I returned to the cabin as the sun was setting, pleasantly exhausted and looking forward to another quiet evening. That's when I first heard it, a soft thud, like something being set down, coming from the floor above. I froze, my hand on the doorknob, heart suddenly racing. Had I imagined it? The cabin had been empty when I left. I was sure of it. I locked the door behind me. Slowly, quietly, I eased the door open and stepped inside. Everything looked just as I'd left it. I stood perfectly still, straining my ears, but heard nothing but the usual creaks and groans of an old wooden structure. "Hello," I called out, feeling a bit foolish. Of course there was no answer. I shook my head, chuckling nervously. It was just my imagination, spurred by too many hours alone with my thoughts. Probably a branch falling on the roof or something. Nothing to worry about. I went about my evening routine, but couldn't quite shake the unease that had settled over me. Every shadow seemed deeper, every noise amplified. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, peering into corners. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and in the cheerful sunlight, my fears from the night before seemed silly. I was determined to shrug off the lingering anxiety and enjoy my day. I decided to stay close to the cabin, maybe do some reading on the porch. That's when I noticed the footprints. They were there in the soft dirt near the woodpile, clearly visible in the morning dew. Footprints that weren't mine, larger and deeper. My heart began to race again. Had Earl come by to check on something? But why wouldn't he have knocked? Made his presence known. I spent the rest of the day on edge, jumping at every sound. As night fell, I made sure every door and window was locked, even dragging a heavy chair in front of the main door. Part of me felt ridiculous. I was a grown man, for crying out loud, not some kid scared of the boogeyman. But a deeper, more primal part of me whispered that something wasn't right. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every creak of the cabin settling, every rustle of wine through the trees had me sitting bolt upright, straining to hear. And then, just as the first gray light of dawn was seeping through the windows, I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving across the floor above me. I lay there, paralyzed with fear, barely breathing. This was no imagination, no trick of the wind. Someone was in the cabin with me. The footsteps moved to the top of the stairs, paused, then slowly began to descend. My eyes darted wildly around the room, looking for a weapon, an escape route, anything. I was in the main room of the cabin, the stairs leading directly down into it. There was nowhere to hide. The steps creaked one by one. Whoever it was, they were taking their time, in no hurry at all. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would burst from my chest. Then silence. They had reached the bottom of the stairs. I could feel eyes on me, watching me through the darkness. "I know you're awake," a voice said softly, sending chills down my spine. "I've been waiting for you to wake up." I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp beside the bed. Light flooded the room, momentarily blinding me. As my eyes adjusted, I saw him. He was an ordinary-looking man, middle-aged, with graying hair and a patchy beard. He could have been anyone's neighbor or co-worker, but the look in his eyes, a mixture of excitement and something darker, hungrier, made my blood run cold. "Who are you?" I managed to croak out. "What do you want?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, I think you know what I want. The same thing everyone wants when they come up here. Solitude, escape, a chance to be someone else." My mind raced. How long had he been here? Had he been watching me this whole time? I thought back to the noises I'd dismissed, the footprints I'd tried to explain away. How could I have been so stupid? "Listen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't want any trouble. Just take whatever you want and go. Please." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, it's not that simple. You see, I've been alone for so long, so very long. And now you're here, and we can be alone together." He took a step towards me, and I scrambled back, pressing myself against the headboard. My eyes darted to the window. Could I make it? The drop wasn't too far, and surely running through the woods was better than whatever this man had planned. As if reading my thoughts, he shook his head. "I wouldn't if I were you. These woods can be dangerous, especially in the dark. You might get hurt, and then where would we be?" "Please," I whispered, hating the tremor in my voice. "Just let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear." His face softened almost sadly. "Oh, my dear boy, don't you see? I'm not keeping you here. You came here. You chose this." With surprising speed, he crossed the room and was beside the bed before I could react. I felt a sharp prick in my arm, and the world began to spin. There, he murmured as darkness crept into the edges of my vision. "Don't fight it. Soon you'll understand. Soon you'll be free, just like me." The last thing I saw before consciousness slipped away was his face, looming over me, smiling that terrible smile. I don't know how long I was out. Time became fluid, reality blurring at the edges. I drifted in and out, catching snippets of one-sided conversations, feeling the prick of a needle, the cool press of a damp cloth on my forehead. When I finally clawed my way back to full awareness, the cabin was silent. Sunlight streamed through the windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a terrible dream. Then I tried to move and found my wrists and ankles securely bound to the bed frame. Panic rose in my throat, threatening to choke me. I thrashed against the restraints, calling out for help even though I knew no one could hear me. Miles from the nearest neighbor, Earl had said. Miles from any hope of rescue. As my struggles weakened, I became aware of a piece of paper on the nightstand, held down by a glass of water. With effort, I was able to stretch just far enough to read it. "My dearest new friend," it read in spidery handwriting. "I'm sorry I had to step out for a bit. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. I've just gone to cancel your car rental and tidy up a few loose ends. Wouldn't want anyone to come looking for you. After all, make yourself comfortable. We're going to have so much fun together. All the time in the world, just you and me." It was signed simply, "Your host." As the full horror of my situation sank in, I began to scream. But there was no one to hear me, no one to help. Just the indifferent forest and the empty cabin, waiting for its master to return. The solitude I'd sought had become my prison, and the escape I'd dreamed of had turned into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no waking. The message on my phone glowed ominously in the dim light. "How do you like my little experiment?" I tried to lift my arm to show the others, but my limbs felt like lead. The air around us was thick with a sickly sweet smell, and with growing horror, I realized we were all trapped in our Airbnb host's twisted game. It had started as a fun getaway for me and my 3 best friends from college. We'd been planning this reunion trip for months, all of us eager to escape our busy lives and reconnect. When Jess found this amazing deal on a luxurious Airbnb in the mountains, it seemed too good to pass up. We arrived on Friday afternoon, giddy with excitement. The house was even more impressive in person, a modern architectural marvel of glass and steel perched on the edge of a cliff, offering breathtaking views of the valley below. Our host, Dr. Evelyn Clark, greeted us warmly. She was a striking woman in her 50s, with sharp features and piercing green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Welcome, welcome," she said, ushering us inside. "I do hope you'll find everything to your liking. I prepared some refreshments in the kitchen. Please, make yourselves at home." As she gave us a tour, I couldn't help but be impressed by the state-of-the-art amenities. Every room was equipped with smart home features, from automated lighting to a complex air filtration system that Dr. Clark explained would ensure the optimal breathing environment at all times. "I'm a bit of a clean air enthusiast," she said with a laugh. "Occupational hazard of being a respiratory specialist, I suppose." We thanked her profusely as she left, excited to start our weekend. The next few hours were a blur of catching up, laughing at old stories, and marveling at the view. We popped open a bottle of wine that had been left for us and toasted to friendship and new adventures. It wasn't until later that evening that things started to feel off. We were in the middle of a board game when Mika suddenly clutched her stomach, her face contorting in pain. "You okay?" I asked, concerned. She nodded weakly. "Yeah, just feeling a bit nauseous. Must have been something I ate." But within minutes, the rest of us started experiencing similar symptoms. My head began to throb, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. I looked around at my friends, seeing my own discomfort mirrored on their faces. "Guys," Alex said, his voice strained, "I don't think this is food poisoning. Something's wrong." We decided to get some fresh air, hoping it would help clear our heads. But as I stood up, my legs buckled beneath me. I barely managed to catch myself on the edge of the table. I can't move properly," I gasped, panic rising in my throat. Jess tried to reach for her phone, but her movements were sluggish, uncoordinated. "We need to call for help," she slurred, her words running together. That's when we noticed the smell. It was faint at first, but growing stronger, a sickly sweet odor that seemed to be coming from the air vents. "The air filtration system," Alex mumbled, his eyes widening with realization. "She's pumping something into the house." A cold dread settled in my stomach as the pieces fell into place. Dr. Clark's emphasis on the air system, her background in respiratory medicine. This was no accident. We tried to make our way to the door, but our bodies refused to cooperate. It was like moving through molasses, each step requiring monumental effort. By the time we reached the entryway, we were all on the verge of collapse. Jess fumbled with the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," she whimpered. "We're trapped." We slumped to the floor, our strength deserting us. The smell was overpowering now, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. I could feel my consciousness slipping away, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. That's when our phones chimed in unison. With trembling hands, I managed to pull mine from my pocket. The message from Dr. Clark glowed on the screen. "How do you like my little experiment?" As the meaning of her words sank in, I heard a soft hiss. A panel in the wall slid open, and Dr. Clark stepped into the room, wearing a sleek gas mask. "Fascinating," she murmured, her voice muffled but clearly excited. "Your resilience is quite impressive. Most subjects would be unconscious by now." "Why?" I managed to croak out, fighting to stay awake. She crouched down beside me, her eyes gleaming behind the mask. "For science, of course. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to find willing participants for respiratory studies these days?" All those pesky ethics boards and consent forms. She waved her hand dismissively. This way is so much more efficient. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but my body wouldn't respond. I could only watch helplessly as she moved among us, checking pulses and making notes on a tablet. "Don't worry," she said almost soothingly. "This is only phase 1. The real fun begins when you wake up." The thought of what phase 2 might entail sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I tried to reach for my friends, to offer some comfort or reassurance, but my arms felt like they weighed a ton. "Dr." Clark continued her monologue, clearly relishing having a captive audience. "You see, I'm on the verge of a breakthrough, a gas that can alter human physiology, enhance lung capacity, maybe even allow us to breathe in environments we never thought possible. Think of the implications. Space travel, deep-sea exploration. The possibilities are endless." She leaned in close, her mask inches from my face. "And you, my dears, get to be a part of history." I wanted to tell her she was insane, that she'd never get away with this. But the words wouldn't come. My eyelids grew heavier, and I could feel myself slipping away. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was Dr. Clark's voice, distant and dreamlike. "Sweet dreams, my little guinea pigs. We have so much work to do." I don't know how long I was out. Time became meaningless, marked only by brief periods of semi-consciousness, where I was aware of tubes and masks, the prick of needles, and Dr. Clark's constant murmuring. When I finally clawed my way back to full awareness, I found myself strapped to a bed in what looked like a makeshift laboratory. The room was filled with beeping machines and bubbling containers of colorful liquids. My friends were similarly restrained on nearby beds, all of us hooked up to an array of monitors and IVs. Panic surged through me, but my body still felt wrong, heavy and unresponsive. I tried to call out, but my voice emerged as little more than a wheeze. "Dr." Clark appeared at my bedside, her face alight with manic enthusiasm. "Ah, you're awake. Excellent. How do you feel? Can you breathe deeply for me?" I wanted to spit in her face, to scream and rage against what she'd done to us. But as I took a breath to do so, I realized something was different. The air felt richer somehow, as if each breath was filling me with energy. "Remarkable, isn't it?" "Dr." Clark said, noting my reaction. "Your lungs are already adapting to the compound. Soon, you'll be able to hold your breath for hours, to thrive in low-oxygen environments. You're evolving, becoming something more than human." The implications of what she was saying horrified me. What had she done to us? What were we becoming? I could hear my friends stirring, their own panic rising as they came to. "Dr." Clark moved among us, checking readings and making adjustments to our IVs. Now, she said soothingly. "Try to stay calm. Elevated heart rates will only skew the data. Besides, you should be excited. You're a part of the next step in human evolution." As the fog in my mind continued to clear, I began to take stock of our situation. The restraints were tight, but not impossible. The 4 in my arm limited my movement, but if I could just reach the emergency call button on the bed. "Dr." Clark must have noticed my gaze. "Oh, don't bother," she said, her tone almost pitying. "This facility is completely isolated. No one knows you're here, and no one's coming to save you. It's just us and the wonders of science." She turned away, engrossed in one of her machines, and I locked eyes with Jess in the next bed. A silent understanding passed between us. We might be trapped, changed, possibly dying, but we weren't giving up. Somehow, we would find a way out of this nightmare. As Dr. Clark began explaining the next phase of her treatments, I focused on wiggling my fingers, testing the limits of my restraints. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Whatever this madwoman had done to us, whatever she planned to do next, we would fight. We had to. The alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. The air around us hummed with the sound of machines keeping us alive, and the sickly sweet smell that had started this nightmare still lingered. But beneath it all, I could sense something else. the faintest whisper of hope, as fragile and vital as a single breath. The long, dark hair wrapped around my fingers as I pulled it from the shower drain. My stomach churned. This was the third time I'd found hair that wasn't mine in this Airbnb, and I'd only been here for 2 days. But it wasn't until I found the diary that I realized the true horror of my situation. I hadn't wanted to come on this solo trip. After my messy breakup with Sarah, my friends insisted I needed to find myself or some other cliche. So here I was, in a quaint little Airbnb on the outskirts of a town I'd never heard of, trying to piece my life back together. The house itself was charming enough, a 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch and gingerbread trim. The host, an elderly woman named Margaret, had greeted me with freshly baked cookies and a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything you need should be here," she'd said, handing me the keys. "I live just down the road if you need anything. Enjoy your stay, dear." The first day passed uneventfully. I spent most of it unpacking and trying to shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. I chalked it up to being alone in a strange place and tried to focus on relaxing. It was on the second morning that I found the first strand of hair, long, dark, and definitely not mine, on my pillow. I dismissed it as an oversight in cleaning, but when I found more in the shower later that day, a chill ran down my spine. Now, on my third day, as I stood in the bathroom staring at the hair tangled around my fingers, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. I decided to do a thorough check of the house, telling myself I was being paranoid, but unable to shake my growing unease. I started in the bedroom, checking under the bed, in the closets, behind the curtains. Nothing seemed out of place, but the hair I'd found nagged at me. Moving to the nightstand, I pulled open the drawer. It was empty except for a small, leather-bound book tucked in the back corner. My heart raced as I pulled it out. A diary. Had Margaret forgotten to remove it between guests? I knew I shouldn't read it. It was a massive invasion of privacy. But as I flipped it open, the date on the first entry caught my eye. It was from last week. My hands trembled as I began to read. Day 1. I finally escaped. This Airbnb seems safer now. I don't think they've followed me, but I can't be sure. I'll stay here for a week, then move on. I have to keep moving. The entry was unsigned. I flipped through the pages, my unease growing with each passage I read. Day 3. I keep hearing noises outside. Footsteps, whispers. Am I imagining things? The old lady who owns this place gives me the creeps. Her smile seems forced. Does she know something? Day 5. Found a hidden camera in the bathroom today. Smashed it. They're watching me. They've found me. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. This had to be some kind of joke, right? A prank by the previous guest? But as I turned to the final entry, dated today, my blood ran cold. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. If you're reading this, get out now. They're coming back. They're already here. Run. The diary slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. This couldn't be real. It had to be an elaborate hoax. But the hair, the feeling of being watched, a creak from downstairs snapped me back to reality. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving across the living room floor. Panic seized me. I lunged for my phone on the bed, but my trembling fingers couldn't seem to dial 911. As I fumbled with the device, a new message popped up on the screen. Unknown number. Enjoying your stay? She did too, at first. The footsteps were at the bottom of the stairs now. My eyes darted around the room, looking for a weapon, an escape route, anything. The window. It wasn't too high. I could make it. As I moved towards it, my foot kicked the diary, sending it sliding across the floor. It hit the wall with a soft thump, and a small piece of paper fluttered out. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I snatched up the paper. An address was scrawled on it, along with a message. If anything happens to me, go here. Tell them Lily sent you." The footsteps were halfway up the stairs now. With no time left to think, I shoved the paper in my pocket, grabbed my phone and car keys, and yanked open the window. The cool night air hit me as I clambered onto the porch roof. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door open. A low chuckle sent chills down my spine. "Oh, little mouse," a voice crooned. "Did you really think you could hide from us?" I didn't look back. I scrambled across the roof, my heart in my throat. The edge approached faster than I expected. It was higher than I'd thought. For a moment, I froze. "We always find our guests." The voice was closer now. "Your friend put up quite a fight. Let's see if you're as entertaining." That was all the motivation I needed. I jumped, hitting the ground hard and rolling. Pain shot through my ankle, but adrenaline pushed me to my feet. I sprinted for my car, fumbling with the keys. A figure appeared at the bedroom window, silhouetted against the light. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt their eyes on me, freezing me in place for a crucial second. The porch light flickered on. Margaret stood in the doorway, that same empty smile on her face. "Leaving so soon, dear? But we haven't even started the fun yet." I wrenched open the car door and threw myself inside, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, just as I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Someone was running towards the car. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as I backed out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I saw multiple figures emerging from the shadows around the house. Margaret stood on the porch, still smiling, watching me flee. My hands shook as I shifted gears and sped down the dark road. Where was I going? What the hell had just happened? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the past few minutes. The diary, the hair, the hidden cameras. How long had this been going on? How many guests had fallen victim to whatever sick game these people were playing? As the adrenaline began to fade, the pain in my ankle flared. I needed to find a hospital or at least somewhere safe to stop and regroup. But where? I was in an unfamiliar town in the middle of the night, with no idea who I could trust. My pocket felt heavy. The note, with one hand on the wheel, I fished out the crumpled piece of paper. The address was for a place about 2 hours away. Did I dare trust it? For all I knew, it could be another trap. But what choice did I have? I couldn't go to the police, not without evidence. They'd think I was crazy. I couldn't go home. What if these people had my information? What if they followed me? A memory surfaced. Sarah, my ex. She had a cabin in the mountains, about 3 hours from here. A place so remote it didn't even have cell service. Could I make it there? I glanced in my rearview mirror. The road behind me was dark and empty. For now. But for how long? My phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "You can run, little mouse. But this game isn't over." I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. My decision made. I'd head for Sarah's cabin. I'd hide out, try to figure out what the hell was going on. And then I'd find a way to stop these people, to save the next guest from whatever fate had befallen Lily, and who knows how many others. As I sped through the night, my mind raced with questions. Who were these people? What did they want? And most chillingly, how many other Arabs were traps like this one? The diary's final warning echoed in my mind. If you're reading this, get out now. They're coming back. They're already here. I pressed the gas pedal harder, watching the speedometer climb. Whatever this was, whoever was behind it, one thing was clear: this game, as they called it, was far from over. And whether I liked it or not, I was now a player. The night stretched out before me, full of shadows and unknowns. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to be anyone's little mouse. I was going to survive. And somehow, someway, I was going to make sure Lily's warning didn't go unheeded. Let the game begin. The door wouldn't open. I yanked on the handle, my panic rising with each futile attempt. The house that had seemed so cutting-edge and cool just hours ago now felt like a high-tech coffin. As the temperature crept higher and the air grew thinner, I realized with horror that our dream vacation had turned into a fight for survival against the very amenities we'd been so excited about. It had all started as a tech enthusiast's dream getaway. When I saw the listing for the ultimate smart home experience on Airbnb, I knew I had to book it for my anniversary weekend with Eliza. She'd always tease me about my gadget obsession, but even she couldn't resist the allure of a fully automated luxury house. We arrived on Friday evening, giddy with excitement. The house was a modernist dream. All sleek lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and hidden panels concealing an array of cutting-edge technology. Our host, a Silicon Valley type named Alex, greeted us with a tablet in hand. "Welcome to the future of living," he beamed, swiping through screens to show us the house's features. Everything here is controllable through the central hub or voice commands. Climate, lighting, entertainment, security. It's all integrated into one seamless system. As he walked us through the house, I marveled at every detail. Lights that adjusted automatically based on the time of day and our movements. A kitchen with a fridge that could order groceries and countertops that doubled as cooking guides. A bathroom mirror that displayed our health stats and suggested personalized skincare routines. The crown jewel, Alex said, leading us to the living room, is our atmospheric regulation system. It maintains the perfect balance of oxygen, humidity, and temperature at all times. You'll never breathe easier. He showed us how to use the tablet to control everything, then left us to enjoy our stay. As soon as the door closed behind him, Eliza turned to me with a mix of amusement and apprehension on her face. "This is amazing, but don't you think it's a bit much? What if something goes wrong?" I laughed, pulling her close. "That's the beauty of it, babe. It's all designed to work together flawlessly. What could possibly go wrong?" Those words would come back to haunt me just a few hours later. Our first night was magical. We played with every feature, marveling at how the house seemed to anticipate our needs before we even voiced them. We fell asleep to a simulated starry sky projected on the bedroom ceiling. The temperature and ambient sounds perfectly calibrated for optimal rest. It was around 3 a.m. when I woke up uncomfortably warm. The room felt stuffy, the air thick and heavy. I tried to call out to the house's AI to lower the temperature, but got no response. Frowning, I reached for the tablet on the nightstand. The screen was dark. I pressed the power button, tapped the screen, nothing. A tendril of unease crept through me. I gently shook Eliza awake. "Hey, something's up with the system. I'm going to check it out." She mumbled sleepily and rolled over as I made my way to the living room. The main control panel on the wall was dark too. I tried the light switches, no response. A glance out the window showed the neighboring houses dark as well. Was it a power outage? But no. The digital clock on the oven was still glowing. Some systems were still running, but others seemed to be malfunctioning. I tried to open the front door to check outside, but it wouldn't budge. The smart locks must have engaged when the system glitched. That's when I noticed the temperature. It was definitely rising, and fast. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I hurried back to the bedroom. "Eliza Wakeu, we need to get out of here." She sat up, instantly alert at the urgency in my voice. "What's going on?" "I don't know. Some kind of system malfunction. But it's getting hot, and the doors won't open. We need to find a way out." We searched the house frantically, trying every door and window. All locked, sealed tight by the security system. The tablet and control panels remained unresponsive. The temperature continued to rise, the air growing thicker by the minute. The atmospheric regulation system. Eliza gasped, realization dawning on her face. If it's malfunctioning. I nodded grimly. It could be pumping in too much heat and not enough oxygen. We tried breaking a window, but the glass was some kind of high-tech shatterproof material. Our phones couldn't get a signal. The house's walls must have been designed to block external frequencies for privacy. As the hours crept by, the situation grew dire. The heat was stifling, Easily over 100 degrees Fahrenheit now. We were drenched in sweat, our movements becoming sluggish as the lack of oxygen took its toll. We slumped in the living room, too weak to continue our fruitless search for an escape. Some anniversary, huh? Eliza mumbled, her head on my shoulder. Despite everything, she still managed a weak smile. I squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. I'm so sorry, babe. This is all my fault. If I hadn't been so excited about all this tech. She shushed me, shaking her head. Don't. We couldn't have known. A thought struck me then, a desperate last-ditch idea. The AI, I said, struggling to my feet. It's still running, even if we can't communicate with it. Maybe if we can access its core programming. I stumbled to the main control panel, prying off the cover with trembling hands. Inside was a maze of circuits and wires. I was no expert, but I tinkered with enough electronics to have a basic understanding. What are you doing? Eliza asked, her voice faint. Trying to trigger a system reset, I muttered, examining the components. If I can just find the right connection. My vision was blurring, my lungs burning with each shallow breath. I blinked hard, forcing myself to focus. There, a cluster of wires that looked like they might lead to the main processor. With a silent prayer, I yanked them free. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the house came back to life. Lights flickered on, and a rush of cool air burst from the vents. The front door clicked as the locks disengaged. We stumbled outside, gulping in the fresh night air. As we stood there on the lawn, shaking and gasping, the absurdity of the situation hit me. I began to laugh, a slightly hysterical edge to it. What's so funny? Eliza asked, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. I wheezed. I can't believe I almost killed us with my smart home obsession. She stared at me for a moment, then joined in the laughter. It was cathartic, releasing all the fear and tension of the past few hours. As our laughter subsided, replaced by exhausted relief, I pulled Eliza close. I am so sorry, I murmured into her hair. I promise, our next trip will be to a nice, normal hotel. Maybe even a cabin in the woods with no electricity at all. She leaned back, a mischievous glint in her eye despite her fatigue. Oh no, mister. You don't get off that easy. Next time, we're going all out. I'm talking space tourism. A week on the International Space Station. I gaped at her, then grinned. Deal. Although after this, that might actually feel safer. As we sat on the curb, waiting for the police and paramedics we'd called from a neighbor's phone, I couldn't help but reflect on the experience. Our brush with death had been terrifying, but it had also shown me something important. All the high-tech gadgets and smart systems in the world couldn't compare to the simple, life-saving power of human ingenuity and determination. I looked at Eliza, her head resting on my shoulder, and felt a surge of love and gratitude. We'd faced this nightmare together and come out stronger. And really, isn't that what marriage is all about? Facing life's challenges side by side, whether they're everyday stresses or malfunctioning killer smart homes. As the first police car rounded the corner, lights flashing, I made a mental note. Our next anniversary would be spent somewhere with fresh air, open spaces, and absolutely no AI. Maybe that cabin in the woods isn't such a bad idea after all. But first, we had quite a story to tell, and I had a strongly worded review to leave on Airbnb. I smiled to myself, already composing it in my head. Great amenities, but be prepared for a potential fight for survival. Pack a manual override kit and maybe an oxygen tank. Oh, and the Wi-Fi was excellent.